our group will be presenting on the concept of atheism itself. So the topic of our discussion today we have four topics to be discussed, which is the first, the concept and the historical development. Second, characteristic and the principle of their belief. Third, impact of belief and their ideology to the world. And lastly is the strength and the shortcoming of the ideology itself. So moving on to the concept and the historical development itself. So the concept of atheism the word of atheism can be divided by two, which is A, which means without or lacking, and theism itself is from the Greek terms theos, which mean God. So atheism is to be without belief in the gods, and atheists are individuals who are without belief in God. So atheist is too often defined incorrectly as a belief system, but to be very clear, atheism is not a disbelief in God's or denial of God. It is a lack of belief in God itself. For founder and the period, so the etymological root for the word atheism is originated before the 5th century itself from the ancient Greek ethos, meaning without God, and the actual term atheism emerged first in the 16th century, and the first individual to identify themselves using the word atheist lived in the 18th century during the age of enlightenment. So for factors of choosing atheism itself, there's four. First is the lack of evidence. So many people are atheists because they think that there's no evidence for God existing itself, or at least no reliable evidence. Second, the presumption of atheism itself. So it says that we should assume that God does not exist and put the honest or people who believe in God to prove that God does exist. Third is the reason that treat God as necessary, because atheists argue that because everything in this universe can be explained in satisfactory way without using God as part of the explanation, then there's no point in saying that God does exist. Lastly, reason to do with the science and history of thought. So for most human history, God was the best explanation for the existence of and nature of the physical universe. But during the last few centuries, scientists had developed solutions that are much more logical, and this explain the world so much better than the existence of the God himself. Next will be explained by my members.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'll be explaining on the characteristic and principles of their belief. So it's just the types of atheism. But classifying this atheism is actually depending on the degree of rejection that exists regarding the idea of a God. So there are four, which is first, the implicit atheism. It refers to those people who lack religious training or have never been exposed to any theistic ideas, such as the newborns who do not believe in God without an explicit and conscious rejection. Next one is the explicit atheism. It is quite the opposite from the previous one. It is those people who know theistic ideas, but they reject them. There's it they make their atheism explicit. So this can be divided into two, which is weak explicit and strong explicit. Weak explicit atheists are people who do not believe in existence of a God, despite having knowledge of religions or theistic ideas, but they do not flatly deny the possibility that God may exist. And the last one is a strong explicit atheist, basically just the same like weak explicit atheists, but they fully subscribe to the claim that no God exists in any way. The next one is the atheist. Next slide, please. Okay. The next one is the atheist philosophical foundation, which can be explained into two aspects. The first one is the practical atheism, is one that is exercised when life is lived without paying attention to the existence of gods, of how widely assumed their absence is. For practical atheists, the existence or non-existence of a god has no true pragmatic effect, so there is a total indifference. And the second one is a theoretical atheism. It is one that explicitly offers arguments and approach with the aim of proving that God does not exist, making use of ontological, epistemological, logical, and metaphysical arguments. So that's it.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Inshallah, I'll be continue speaking about the impact of belief of atheists and their ideology to the world. So the first impact, can you move to the next slide? So the first impact is psychological anxiety and conflict. So as human being, we all know that each of us, we have kind of a persistent instinct, like as many questions go around our mind, including why are we created, who created us, to what we go. So the human actually face a lot of situation and incident that make us think of such question. For example, like we tend to experience sometimes disasters, losing family members or loved one, and that make humans think of their destiny and future. So like for atheism, they remain unable to understand the purpose of life and the universe. So they just provide humans with a set of assumptions and suspicion that do not convince or satisfy one's thirst. So the second one is selfishness and individualism. Uh, they they serve their own interests and not thinking of other. As Islam, our religion urge us people to serve and to do good to the others, for us to seek Allah satisfaction, right? So for atheists, there are people, they became careless of the poor and people in need, parents and also children. So the third impact is atheism doesn't educate the conscience nor intimidate the man of a powerful God that capable of observing his acts and deeds. So they also taught their followers that they are found like this by a coincidence and they are not created by a creator. So the next one is the demolish of family system. So we know that family is the most important cell in the social system of mankind. And when humans get corrupt, all the family relation will get corrupt as well. So for instance, a corrupt husband will have a negative impact on his children and wife. So the same concept applies for the wife and children. And for during this era, atheism, we started to hear that they have contract of marriage, like the relationship between the husband and wife became only about the sexual satisfaction, and they only seek benefits from one another. So the last one, the political crime, and we also have seen that great colonial countries use every despicable means in enslaving poor people as well as getting their fortunes and plunder their ways. In fact, that the world now is now filled with global selfishness, material practice by colonial countries which is focused on enslaving people and plundering their money, as well as making poor countries feel anxious, fearful, and chaotic.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. The string and the ontology for atheism. Number one, spiritual order. Number one, spiritual order. It stands not have to be attendant to any single worldview or value. The spiritual order is independent and free, thought, because atheism is that religious belief in person people mind, which is the best reason to rule and incite people. This deprives them of possibility of life and the freedom to experience many aspects of what the say as the rich and what from world. Number two, many of life. It has a great impact on human understanding of the material of the world, because they believe only in dunya, not in يوم القيامة آخرة. Number three, no more idea. Atheism exempt religious belief for the countries for human morality. For example, it does not stand in the way of homosexual. Number four, atheism can validate the position and the standpoint. Atheism is a shortened and material in return. It's for country growth of the consolidation of development has a 100 role. In the ending, the best thing about atheism, I think, is that it negative proof of the superfluity and the perfection of Islam.
Okay, next is shortcomings. Atheists' shortcomings stems from the fact that they heavily rely on logic and science for proof. So according to them, if science cannot prove something, then it doesn't exist. Or if we can't see something or we cannot imagine something, then it doesn't exist. However, as Muslims, we know that this mindset is faulty because science can be wrong at times and human minds is limited. It cannot comprehend things that it has not seen or come in contact with. Thus, some of the claims made by atheists, especially those related to God, is incorrect. Some of it are, firstly, they claim that there is no evidence to support God's existence. However, this evidence can be found all around us. Each thing, the heartbeat, the breath we take, the cosmic harmony in the universe are all evidence of a high power who operate and control all these things. And we Muslims believe that this high power is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah also has mentioned in Surah An-Nahl, the night, the day, the sun, the moon, and the stars are all under His command. Indeed, in that are the signs for people who reason or use their intellect. Okay, next, atheists also claim or believe that the universe created itself or came into existence by chance. For example, the Big Bang Theory or the Darwin Theory. This claim is also false because if we use logic, every creation needs a creator. The pen we use has its own creator. The laptop, the bag, the phone we use all have their own creator. So what more, the human being or the vast universe? Without a doubt, it too have its own creator, which is Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has refuted these claims by saying in Surah At-Tur, verse 35, or were they created by nothing, or were they the creators of themselves? So from this, we know that atheism has its own shortcoming, and surely an ideology with shortcoming cannot be regarded as the truth. Next.